Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Washington, D.C., at the end of the day, exuded the serenity of a city preparing to transition from daytime frenzy to nighttime calm. Government buildings reflected the last rays of sunlight, and the wind rustled the leaves of the trees along the avenues lined with golden streetlights. But beneath this apparent tranquility, an encounter would disrupt the course of the evening. Sarah Williams, 42, a black woman with firm features and penetrating eyes, was leaving FBI headquarters after a confidential strategy meeting. She wore a perfectly tailored dark suit, a symbol of her authority and power. Beneath her elegant glasses lay the sharp intelligence and determination that had earned her the position of FBI director, one of the most influential and closely watched positions in the country. Every step she took resonated with the assurance of someone accustomed to making vital decisions for national security. She climbed into her quiet, impeccably maintained black car. The engine purred softly, and she set off, focused on the journey home. The air hung with a subtle scent of confidence and control. Yet tonight, even her exceptional vigilance would be tested. A few blocks away, Ryan Thompson, a 28-year-old police officer, had just finished his routine patrol. He was looking for minor infractions, believing his mission was simple and straightforward. When Sarah's car's headlights caught his eye, he noticed a slight speeding violation. Unknowingly, he had just set off a chain of events that would not only jeopardize his career, but also bring him face to face with one of the most powerful figures in the country. Sarah had no idea. She thought this check would be trivial, a mere formality. But reality would soon catch up with her. Ryan, nervous and determined to follow the rules to the letter, had no idea he was dealing with the FBI director. And she, despite her apparent calm, felt a sudden tension in the air. What began as a routine traffic stop would quickly turn into a public humiliation, testing her patience, her composure, and her ability to handle the unexpected. The scene was set, an ordinary Washington street, a powerful and respected woman, a confused and pressured young police officer. A capricious fate was about to write an unexpected chapter in Sarah Williams's story. Night was falling quickly over Washington, the gleaming buildings reflected in the puddles left by recent rain. Sarah Williams wove through traffic, her hands perfectly placed on the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the road, but her mind already mentally debriefing the meeting she had just left. Every decision she made today could have national consequences, and she was still weighing the implications of several ongoing operations. Suddenly, red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror. She immediately recognized a police car, but her composure remained intact. In her career, Sarah had learned never to let adrenaline take over, even in the most tense situations. She slowed down slightly and pulled over, preparing her documents, aware that this interaction was going to be formal, and nothing more. Ryan Thompson, a young police officer recently assigned to the night patrol, was behind her. His heart was beating faster than usual. He had just noticed a slight speeding violation. For him, it was a simple situation: identify the violation, ask for papers, and file a report. He had no idea the importance of the driver he was about to pull over. He tapped his siren, and Sarah responded immediately by pulling over to the shoulder, the car sliding smoothly to the curb. The tires squealed lightly on the wet asphalt, and the relative silence of the night was punctuated by the clicking of seatbelts and the car's brakes. Ryan stepped out of his vehicle, flashlight in hand. His impeccable uniform betrayed his seriousness, but his inexperience showed in his eyes. "Good evening, ma'am. Could you show me your license and insurance papers, please?" he said, his voice firm but slightly shaky. Sarah rolled down the window, a small, polite smile playing on her lips. "Good evening, officer. Of course, I can present them to you," she replied calmly, pulling out her documents with professional precision. At that moment, everything seemed under control. But fate had other plans. Ryan, stressed by a longer-than-expected night patrol and heavy traffic, failed to notice the glint of authority and power in Sarah's eyes. His instinct for control took over, and he ordered Sarah out of the vehicle, an action that would change the course of the evening. Sarah, surprised but unperturbed, complied slowly, knowing that every gesture counted. She weighed the situation in her mind. A simple check could easily escalate, especially with an inexperienced and pressured officer. Yet she knew that patience and strategy were essential to manage what came next. Thus began a night that promised to be long, tense, and unforgettable, a night in which power, authority, and misunderstanding would collide on a single Washington street. Ryan Thompson, the young police officer, felt his heart race as Sarah slowly got out of her car. He was used to routine checks, but something about her demeanor and calmness unnerved him. Her precise movements, her upright posture, and her direct gaze seemed to challenge his authority without even saying a word. "Ma'am, please follow me to my car," Ryan ordered, trying to mask his discomfort. Sarah nodded with unnerving calm and moved forward slowly. Her heels clicked on the wet pavement, a sound that echoed in the night silence. Passers-by were few and far between, but some were already observing the scene, intrigued by the unusual intensity of the scrutiny. Ryan began to search the vehicle, unaware that every movement was being meticulously analyzed by Sarah. She remained calm, every breath controlled, aware that the slightest impulsive reaction could be used against her. "You must tell me the precise reason for this inspection," Sarah demanded, her voice firm but polite. Her eyes scanned Ryan with an intensity that betrayed her natural authority. Ryan, uncomfortably, stammered, It's just a routine check." But Sarah wasn't impressed. "A routine check? I remind you that I have the right to know your identity and the exact reason for this check." The tone rose slightly. Ryan, feeling challenged, began to lose his confidence. He couldn't imagine he was facing one of the most influential figures in the country. Sarah's experience and aura far outweighed her young age and limited training. As Ryan tried to regain control, Sarah sensed the situation could quickly escalate. Her years with the FBI had taught her to remain calm in critical situations, but she also knew she had to proceed with caution. She slowly extended her hand to show her credentials, keeping her gaze fixed on the officer, without a tremor, without a word too many. Silence fell for a few seconds, interrupted only by the clatter of papers and the rustling of the night wind. The streetlights cast eerie shadows across the stage, giving the interaction an almost cinematic feel. Every detail, every movement, every word now mattered. And it was in this tense calm that the error was about to occur, an error that would transform this routine control into a public incident that all of Washington would talk about in the days to come. Ryan Thompson felt a surge of adrenaline he'd never experienced before. Every breath Sarah took seemed to match his own, every precise, measured gesture of her hands amplified his unease. He was used to being in control, but something about his driver left him in no doubt. He didn't have the authority here, even if he didn't yet know why. "Officer, I presented my papers to you and asked for your name and reason." "I ask that you answer clearly," Sarah said, her voice calm but sharp. Her tone left no room for negotiation. Ryan gritted his teeth, nervous. He glanced around, noticing that a few passers-by had started filming with their phones. The pressure was mounting, and every second made the situation more delicate. He felt watched, judged, and for the first time, vulnerable. "Look, ma'am. I'm just doing my job," Ryan stammered, trying to regain control, but his words seemed weak against Sarah's imposing presence. Sarah took a deep breath and remained motionless, every muscle under control. She knew that the slightest sudden movement on her part could be misinterpreted, but she wasn't about to give in. "Your job doesn't give you the right to humiliate or treat someone unnecessarily. I advise you to be professional." At that moment, a second police officer arrived in a car, alerted by Ryan's radio. He quickly got out and began to survey the scene, preparing to support his colleague. But upon seeing Sarah, he immediately sensed the quiet strength emanating from her. Even without knowing her identity, her demeanor commanded respect and a certain mixture of fear and doubt. The situation, which should have been a simple routine check, was turning into a tense confrontation. Passers-by were whispering, some were filming, and the air seemed charged with electricity. Ryan felt fear mingling with his frustration. He wanted to finish the check quickly, but every move Sarah made was disarming him further. Sarah, however, remained calm. Her years leading sensitive investigations and managing critical situations had taught her to measure every word, every movement. She knew that the key wasn't aggression, but total control of the situation. And in her mind, a clear strategy was beginning to form: make Ryan understand the error of his ways, without causing irreversible chaos. The relative calm of the street contrasted with the tension between them. This routine, seemingly banal checkpoint was becoming a test of composure, power, and discernment. And no one, not even Ryan, yet knew how much this confrontation would change their lives. Ryan Thompson felt the pressure mount to a level he'd never experienced before. Every look from Sarah seemed to challenge him, every precise gesture of her hand betrayed an authority he couldn't ignore. He wanted to finish the test quickly, but he was now completely disoriented. "Officer, you must understand that I will not tolerate any form of humiliation or unfair treatment," Sarah said, her voice calm but icy. Her words were measured, but carried an intensity that paralyzed Ryan. He understood that this wasn't just a driver, she was someone accustomed to handling situations where lives and careers were at stake. Ryan tried to answer, his voice trembling. I'm just doing my job, ma'am. I have to follow procedure." But Sarah was not intimidated. The procedure must be applied with discernment and respect. You cannot blindly ignore your duty. At that moment, a small group of passers-by had stopped, intrigued by the confrontation. Some took out their phones to film. Ryan felt everyone's gaze pressing down on him. Every word, every movement could be interpreted and broadcast instantly. His blood ran cold. A second police officer, now standing next to him, looked at Sarah with some confusion. Even he, who hadn't been involved in the initial arrest, felt Sarah's quiet power. The situation was beginning to spiral out of control. Ryan, frustrated and embarrassed, began to raise his voice. "I asked you to get out of the vehicle and cooperate." Sarah, unperturbed, crossed her arms and stared straight into his eyes. "And I'm telling you, your behavior is unacceptable. If you continue like this, it will not only be a violation of my rights, but also an act that will cost you and your career dearly." The tone rose again, and the second officer placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder in an attempt to calm him down. But it was clear, Ryan had lost all control of the situation. Every rule he thought he was applying seemed to be backfiring on him. Sarah, aware that the situation could escalate further, remained perfectly calm, weighing her words carefully. She knew that patience and strategy were her best weapons. While remaining calm, she began to prepare a revelation that would shock Ryan and change the course of this night. The conflict was no longer just a routine matter of control, it had become a confrontation of power, perception, and respect, set against a backdrop of racial tensions and misunderstood authority. And soon, Ryan would discover he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. Young Officer Ryan Thompson felt panic settling in. Every word Sarah said was a reminder that he was out of control. Bystanders began whispering among themselves, some pulling out their phones to film the scene. The video of this innocuous but intense confrontation would spread quickly, Ryan thought, and the thought terrified him. "Look, ma'am, I'm just doing my job." He stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. Sarah stared at him, motionless, every muscle under control. Her calm contrasted with Ryan's palpable nervousness, and it further accentuated his discomfort. At that moment, a second officer approached to support Ryan. He took in the situation and frowned. "What's going on here?" he asked, trying to understand. But the image he saw, a sleek, confident, and motionless black woman facing a nervous young officer, didn't fit any protocol he was familiar with. Ryan, in his stress, made a classic mistake. He assumed Sarah was trying to manipulate or intimidate him. He interpreted her calm demeanor as a provocation. "Ma'am, I order you to cooperate immediately," he shouted, his voice trembling but firm. Sarah remained impassive. "Officer, I'm not here to challenge you. I'm here to make sure you do your job properly. But your behavior is unacceptable." Her tone remained polite, but each word hit like a hammer. The misunderstanding reached its peak when Ryan began to search the vehicle more rigorously, thinking she was hiding something. Sarah held up her hands, unfazed. I assure you, you're wasting your time and energy. You're treating me like a criminal, when you have no reason to. The second officer tried to calm Ryan down, but he, convinced he was doing his duty, refused to listen. The situation was now a collision of perceptions. Sarah saw a panicked officer overwhelmed by his mistake, while Ryan saw a driver who refused to obey and tried to manipulate him. And it was at that precise moment that Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She knew that if she revealed her identity, the whole misunderstanding would end immediately, but dramatically. And she was ready to use that leverage with all the power and authority she had. The young officer had no idea, the mistake he had just made would soon turn against him in the most humiliating way. The cool night air was now thick with tension. Intrigued passers-by had gathered around, several of them taking out their phones to film the incident. Every click, every whisper seemed to increase the pressure on Ryan Thompson. He was beginning to feel like this situation was about to get completely out of hand. Sarah Williams stood motionless, calmly observing the young officer's every move. Her composure stood in stark contrast to Ryan's growing nervousness. She knew that her years of crisis management at the FBI gave her a considerable psychological advantage. Every second that passed strengthened her control over the situation, even if no one around her realized it yet. Officer, you are losing your professionalism. I advise you to cease this unnecessary search immediately, Sarah said, her voice firm but measured. She wasn't shouting, but each word hung heavy in the still night air. Ryan, frustrated and embarrassed, raised his voice. Ma'am, I order you to cooperate. At that moment, a passerby dared to intervene. Hey, why are you treating her like that? Tensions rose even higher. Witnesses' murmurs turned to disapproval, and several phones were filming the scene, ready to be shared on social media. The second officer tried to calm Ryan down. Relax, Ryan, maybe we should just. But Ryan, blinded by his need for control and his sense of authority, ignored the warning. He didn't understand that his career and credibility were now at stake. Sarah, aware that chaos was beginning, prepared to put an end to this escalation. She knew that revealing her identity was the only way to stop the situation without provoking a more serious incident. Every detail of the arrest, the flashing lights, the murmurs of passers-by, the stares fixed on them, suggested that the moment of truth was approaching. And when Sarah finally spoke, there was complete silence. Her voice echoed through the night, calm but relentless. I am Sarah Williams, Director of the FBI. Ryan instantly paled. His eyes widened, and he took a step back. The second police officer gaped, unable to react immediately. The shocked bystanders stopped whispering for a moment, sensing that something monumental had just happened. In an instant, the situation had changed. The nighttime routine had become a public humiliation for Ryan, and a lesson in composure and self-control for Sarah. The consequences would soon follow. The silence that followed Sarah's announcement echoed through the street like a clap of thunder. I'm Sarah Williams, Director of the FBI, she repeated, her voice calm but authoritative. The words hit Ryan Thompson like a hammer, his brain struggling to grasp the magnitude of what he had just heard. His hands were shaking slightly. He'd spent his entire career enforcing the law, but he'd never found himself facing someone whose authority far exceeded his own. The idea he'd just raised the highest authority of the FBI simultaneously terrified and humiliated him. The second policeman, frozen, turned to him incredulously. Wait, you mean? Ryan nodded, unable to speak. He felt his cheeks flush and his professional pride crumble. Passers-by, too, gradually realized the gravity of the situation. Murmurs turned to shocked gasps, and cell phones captured every moment, immortalizing the officer's humiliation. Sarah, unperturbed, spoke again firmly. You have just applied the law incorrectly and, in doing so, you have violated my rights. This is not just a routine missed check, it is a serious error that could have consequences for your career. Ryan lowered his head, searching for words he couldn't find. Fear mingled with shame, and he knew this mistake wouldn't soon be forgotten. Sarah's public revelation had instantly shifted the power of the situation. The street seemed to hold its breath. Sarah continued, her voice soft but sharp, "I will be reporting this incident to the police department. I want the entire matter documented and corrective action taken. You will learn what it truly means to exercise authority with respect and discernment." The young officer could only silently accept. He had just come up against a wall of authority and competence he had never imagined existed. And as Sarah returned to her car with the same confidence she had had when she arrived, he understood that his career had just taken an irreversible turn. The revelation not only marked the end of the interrogation, it became a clear symbol: no matter how much power one believes one has, it can be instantly overturned by authority, knowledge, and composure. And for Ryan Thompson, that night would remain etched as one of the most humbling and formative lessons of his life. No sooner had Sarah gotten back to her car than Ryan Thompson was overwhelmed by the magnitude of his mistake. Panic and shame mingled with a dull fear. He knew this incident would cost him dearly. Every passerby who had filmed the incident could now share the video on social media, and Ryan's reputation was now at stake. The second officer immediately called his superior to file a report. The hierarchy quickly realized the seriousness of the situation. The incident was no longer a routine check, it was a direct violation of the rights of a senior government figure. Ryan was provisionally suspended, and an internal investigation was launched. Sarah, for her part, continued her walk home, unperturbed but clear-headed. She knew the situation had to be handled with precision. Her priority was not revenge, but justice and correcting mistakes. The next day, the police department received strict guidelines on procedural compliance and diversity and sensitivity training. The media, alerted by witnesses and viral videos, began to report the story. Social media erupted with thousands of views, hundreds of outraged comments, and discussions about institutional racism and misunderstood power. For Ryan, it was a waking nightmare. Every notification on his phone seemed to remind him of his failure. In Sarah's office, things returned to normal, but the incident left a lasting impression. She wrote a detailed report on how control situations can escalate if officers fail to respect basic rights, and she proposed reforms to prevent this from happening again. Meanwhile, Ryan, isolated and humiliated, was beginning to understand the magnitude of the lesson. His career would now depend on his ability to learn from this mistake, accept responsibility, and rebuild his career. The incident, though painful, was becoming a formative experience, marked by the power and composure of Sarah Williams. The night that began as a routine traffic stop had turned into an event that would resonate within the police department and beyond. And for Sarah, it was a reminder that even in the most humble situations, power and justice could be exercised with calm and determination. By the next morning, the incident had already made the rounds in Washington and on social media. Videos and eyewitness accounts were circulating, showing the confrontation between Sarah Williams and the young officer. But instead of simply denouncing it, Sarah decided to turn this event into a lesson for all. In an official interview at FBI headquarters, surrounded by her staff, she addressed reporters with a clear and determined voice: "What happened last night is not just an individual incident. It is a reminder that respect for rights, training, and sensitivity are essential in law enforcement. Every officer must remember that with power comes responsibility." The media picked up on her words. The story quickly became a national symbol of professionalism and justice. Sarah also emphasized the importance of diversity and understanding in law enforcement, calling for training programs to prevent similar mistakes from happening again. Ryan Thompson, still reeling from the public humiliation, was summoned for a formal interview. This time, he fully understood the scope of his actions. He listened attentively to Sarah and the police department officials, realizing that his behavior had violated not only the rights of a citizen, but also protocol and professional ethics. Through this lesson, Sarah demonstrated that true power lies not in brute authority, but in the ability to act with discernment, composure, and respect. The incident became a common example cited in trainings and conferences, illustrating how routine control could spiral out of control, and, more importantly, how calm and self-control could restore justice. The lesson was clear: every mistake could be corrected, every misunderstanding could become a learning opportunity, but only if those involved were willing to listen and understand. For Sarah, That night would remain etched as an example of how courage and integrity could triumph in the face of injustice. Days after the incident, Washington seemed to have regained its composure, but the aftermath of the confrontation was still palpable. Ryan Thompson had been officially disciplined, temporarily suspended, and assigned to intensive training sessions on sensitivity and respect for civil rights. The public humiliation had left an indelible mark on him, but it also served as a crucial lesson for his future career. Sarah Williams, meanwhile, returned to her FBI duties with renewed serenity. The incident had demonstrated not only her ability to manage crises, but also the power of self-control and professionalism. In her office, surrounded by reports and files, she pondered how to use this experience to strengthen agent protocols and training. The media continued to follow the case, but the story quickly evolved into a testament to resilience and justice. Sarah was praised for her calm and strategic response, and her name became even more respected within the law enforcement and government communities. For Ryan, this painful experience turned into an opportunity for growth. He learned to listen, to think before acting, and to understand that power must always be exercised responsibly. The young officer, though marked by shame, began a path of redemption, aware that every mistake could become a valuable lesson. And for Sarah, the night that began as a routine checkpoint remained a reminder that even in the most humble situations, dignity, calm, and competence could triumph. She had faced confusion, fear, and injustice, and emerged stronger. Her reputation intact, she continued to lead the FBI with determination and wisdom, ready to face any challenge, knowing that true power lies in self-control and respect for others. Thus ended this unexpected confrontation, transformed into a symbol of courage, justice, and timeless lessons for all who had witnessed that unforgettable night in Washington, D.C.